There was once upon a time a fisherman who had fished all day long and had caught not so much as a sprat. So at night there he sat by the fire, rubbing his knees and warming his shins, and waiting for supper that his wife was cooking for him, and his hunger was as sharp as vinegar, and his temper hot enough to fry fat. While he sat there grumbling and growling and trying to make himself comfortable and warm, there suddenly came a knock at the door. The good woman opened it, and there stood an old man, clad all in red from head to foot, and with a snowy beard at his chin as white as winter snow. The fisherman's wife stood gasping and staring at the strange figure, but the old man in red walked straight into the hut. "Bring your nets, fisherman," said he, "and come with me. There is something that I want you to catch for me, and if I have luck I will pay you for your fishing as never fisherman was paid before." "Not I," said the fisherman, "I go out no more this night. I have been fishing all day long until my back is nearly broken, and have caught nothing. And now I am not such a fool as to go out and leave a good supper and a warm fire at your bidding." But the fisherman's wife had listened to what the old man had said about paying for the job, and she was of a different mind from her husband. "Come," said she, "the old man promises to pay you well. This is not a chance to be lost, I can tell you, and my advice to you is that you go." The fisherman shook his head. No, he would not go. He had said he would not, and he would not. But the wife only smiled and said again, "My advice to you is that you go." The fisherman grumbled and swore that he would not go. The wife said nothing but one thing. She did not argue, she did not lose her temper, she only said to everything that he said, "My advice to you is that you go." At last the fisherman's anger boiled over. "Very well," said he, spitting his words at her. "If you drive me out into the night, I suppose I will have to go." And then he spoke the words that so many men say, "Many a man has come to trouble by following his wife's advice." Then down he took his fur cap and up he took his nets, and off he and the old man marched through the moonlight, their shadows bobbing along like black spiders behind them. Well, on they went, out from the town and across the fields and through the woods, until at last they came to a dreary, lonesome desert, where nothing was to be seen but gray rocks and weeds and thistles. "Well," said the fisherman, "I have fished, man and boy, for 47 years, but never did I see as unlikely a place to catch anything as this." But the old man said never a word. First of all he drew a great circle with strange figures, marking it with his finger upon the ground. Then out from under his red gown he brought a tinderbox and steel, and a little silver casket covered all over with strange figures of serpents and dragons and what not. He brought some sticks of spicewood from his pouch, and then he struck a light and made a fire. Out of the box he took a gray powder, which he flung upon the little blaze. Puff! Flash! A vivid flame went up into the moonlight, and then a dense smoke as black as ink, which spread out wider and wider, far and near, till all below was darker than the darkest midnight. Then the old man began to utter strange spells and words. Presently there began a rumbling that sounded louder and louder and nearer, until it roared and bellowed like thunder. The earth rocked and swayed, and the poor fisherman shook and trembled with fear till his teeth chattered in his head. Then suddenly the roaring and bellowing ceased, and all was as still as death, though the darkness was as thick and black as ever. "Now," said the old magician, for such he was, "now we are about to take a journey such as no one ever traveled before. Heed well what I tell you. Speak not a single word, for if you do, misfortune will be sure to happen." "Ain't I to say anything?" said the fisherman. "No." "Not even boo to a goose?" "No." "Well, that is pretty hard upon a man who likes to say his say," said the fisherman. "And moreover," said the old man, "I must blindfold you as well." Thereupon he took from his pocket a handkerchief, and made ready to tie it about the fisherman's eyes. "And ain't I to see anything at all?" said the fisherman. "No." "Not even so much as a single feather?" "No." "Well, then," said the fisherman, "I wish I'd not come." But the old man tied the handkerchief tightly around his eyes, and then he was as blind as a bat. "Now," said the old man, "throw your leg over what you feel and hold fast." The fisherman reached down his hand, and there felt the back of something rough and hairy. He flung his leg over it, and whisk! Whiz! Off he shot through the air like a skyrocket. Nothing was left for him to do but grip tightly with hands and feet and to hold fast. On they went, and on they went, until, after a great while, whatever it was that was carrying him lit upon the ground, and there the fisherman found himself standing. For that which had brought him had gone. The old man whipped the handkerchief off his eyes, and there the fisherman found himself on the shores of the sea, where there was nothing to be seen but water upon one side and rocks and naked sand upon the other. "This is the place for you to cast your nets," said the old magician, "for if we catch nothing here we catch nothing at all." The fisherman unrolled his nets and cast them and dragged them, and then cast them and dragged them again, but neither time caught so much as a herring. But the third time that he cast he found that he had caught something that weighed as heavy as lead. He pulled and pulled, until by and by he dragged the load ashore, and what should it be but a great chest of wood, blackened by sea-water, and covered with shells and green moss. That was the very thing that the magician had come to fish for. From his pouch the old man took a little golden key, which he fitted into a keyhole in the side of the chest. He threw back the lid, the fisherman looked within, and there was the prettiest little palace that man's eye ever beheld, all made of mother of pearl and silver frosted as white as snow. The old magician lifted the little palace out of the box and set it upon the ground. Then, lo and behold, a marvelous thing happened. For the palace instantly began to grow for all the world like a soap bubble, until it stood in the moonlight gleaming and glistening like snow. The windows bright with the lights of 1,000 wax tapers, and the sound of music and voices and laughter coming from within. Hardly could the fisherman catch his breath from one strange thing when another happened. The old magician took off his clothes and his face, yes, his face, for all the world as though it had been a mask, and there stood as handsome and noble a young man as ever the light looked on. Then, beckoning to the fisherman, dumb with wonder, he led the way up the great flight of marble steps to the palace door. As he came, the door swung open with a blaze of light, and there stood hundreds of noblemen, all clad in silks and satins and velvets, who, when they saw the magician, bowed low before him, as though he had been a king. Leading the way, they brought the two through halls and chambers and room after room, each more magnificent than the other, until they came to one that surpassed 100-fold any of the others. At the farther end was a golden throne, and upon it sat a lady more lovely and beautiful than a dream, her eyes as bright as diamonds, her cheeks like rose leaves, and her hair like spun gold. She came halfway down the steps of the throne to welcome the magician, and when the two met they kissed one another before all those who were looking on. Then she brought him to the throne and seated him beside her, and there they talked for a long time very earnestly. Nobody said a word to the fisherman, who stood staring about him like an owl. "I wonder," said he to himself at last, "if they will give a body a bite to eat by and by, for, to tell the truth, the good supper he had come away from at home had left a sharp hunger gnawing at his insides, and he longed for something good and warm to fill the empty place." But time passed, and not so much as a crust of bread was brought to stay his stomach. By and by the clock struck 12, and then the two who sat upon the throne arose. The beautiful lady took the magician by the hand, and, turning to those who stood around, said, in a loud voice, "Behold him who alone is worthy to possess the jewel of jewels. Unto him do I give it, and with it all power of powers." Thereon she opened a golden casket that stood beside her, and brought thence a little crystal ball, about as big as a pigeon's egg, in which was something that glistened like a spark of fire. The magician took the crystal ball and thrust it into his bosom, but what it was the fisherman could not guess, and if you do not know I shall not tell you. Then for the first time the beautiful lady seemed to notice the fisherman. She beckoned him, and when he stood beside her 2 men came carrying a chest. The chief treasurer opened it, and it was full of bags of gold money. "How will you have it?" said the beautiful lady. "Have what?" said the fisherman. "Have the pay for your labor," said the beautiful lady. "I will," said the fisherman, promptly, "take it in my hat." "So be it," said the beautiful lady. She waved her hand, and the chief treasurer took a bag from the chest, untied it, and emptied a cataract of gold into the fur cap. The fisherman had never seen so much wealth in all his life before, and he stood like a man turned to stone. "Is all this mine?" said the fisherman. "It is," said the beautiful lady. "Then God bless your pretty eyes," said the fisherman. Then the magician kissed the beautiful lady, and, beckoning to the fisherman, left the throne room the same way that they had come. The nobleman, in silks and satins and velvets, marched ahead, and back they went through the other apartments, until at last they came to the door. Out they stepped, and then what do you suppose happened? If the wonderful palace had grown like a bubble it vanished. There the two stood on the seashore, with nothing to be seen but rocks and sand and water, and the starry sky overhead. The fisherman shook his cap of gold, and it gingled and tinkled, and was as heavy as lead. If it was not all a dream, he was rich for life. But anyhow, said he, they might have given a body a bite to eat. The magician put on his red clothes and his face again, making himself as hoary and as old as before. He took out flint and steel, and his sticks of spicewood and his grey powder, and made a great fire and smoke just as he had done before. Then again he tied his handkerchief over the fisherman's eyes. "Remember," said he, "what I told you when we started upon our journey. Keep your mouth tight shut, for if you utter so much as a single word you are a lost man. Now throw your leg over what you feel and hold fast." The fisherman had his net over one arm and his cap of gold in the other hand. Nevertheless, there he felt the same hairy thing he had felt before. He flung his leg over it, and away he was gone through the air like a skyrocket. Now, he had grown somewhat used to strange things by this time, so he began to think he would like to see what sort of a creature it was upon which he was riding thus through the sky. So he contrived, in spite of his net and cap, to push up the handkerchief from over one eye. Out he peeped, and then he saw what the strange steed was. He was riding upon a he-goat as black as night, and in front of him was the magician riding upon just such another, his great red robe fluttering out in the moonlight like huge red wings. "Great herring and little fishes," roared the fisherman, "it is a billy goat." Instantly goats, old man, and all were gone like a flash. Down fell the fisherman through the empty sky, whirling over and around like a frog. He held tightly to his net, but away flew his fur cap, the golden money falling in a shower like sparks of yellow light. Down he fell, until his head spun like a top. By good luck his house was just below, with its thatch of soft rushes. Into the very middle of it he tumbled, and right through the thatch, bump, into the room below. The good wife was in bed, snoring away for dear life, but such a noise as the fisherman made coming into the house was enough to wake the dead. Up she jumped, and there she sat, staring and winking with sleep, and with her brains as addled as a duck's egg in a thunderstorm. "There," said the fisherman, as he gathered himself up and rubbed his shoulder, "that is what comes of following a woman's advice."